say good evening, everybody. That's more better. For some reason, it doesn't seem as hot as yesterday. Can I get an amen about that? Amen. And for those of you that have been here every day this week, great. For those of you that need a little recap, on night one we talked about some of the things that happen that are going around the world today, right? Because our theme is relevant and how our faith and how being a Christian is relevant today. And so night one was all about some of the crazy things and some of the frightening things happening in our world today that we shouldn't be so surprised about. And then night two, when we talked about, remember Paul, this was just last night, Paul was writing the book of Philippians. He's writing this from jail out of all places. He's writing this, I'm not even worried about my earthly body. Jesus already said I'm going to suffer in this world. And so Paul's like, remember, he's like, I'm not going to worry about what's going on around me. I'm not going to worry about what I see. I'm not going to worry about all the drama and everything that's going on around me. I'm focused on that end finish line. Remember, it's like he's running, and he's running. He's like, there's some things in my life that I could have done better. There's some things that I could have done to prepare better. But, despite all my imperfections, I'm only focused on that end, that finish day, when I cross that finish line, and I make it to heaven's gates, and God's either going to say, well done, my good and faithful servant, or, what did you do with your life? And so right now, tonight, we're going to talk about, how do you do that, though? How do you get from point here to point there? And so tonight, tomorrow, we're going to focus on, how do you get to that heaven's gate? And how do you make it into heaven with Jesus? And tonight's message is, don't stress, stretch. Don't stress. Don't stress about it. Stretch. Does it make sense now? But with it. A few days ago, I was in Walla Walla, Washington. I live in Walla Walla, Washington. And if you've never been to Walla Walla, we have some of the most beautiful sunsets that I've ever seen. Now I'm from Southern California. I dabbled a little bit in Northern California. I've even lived here in Oregon for a few years. But Walla Walla has some of the most beautiful sunsets I've ever seen. And so a few days ago, I was out walking around my neighborhood. And I just noticed this most beautiful sunset. It was just on the horizon. And I was noticing all the different colors, the reds, the orange, the blues, the purples, all the different hues. And it was almost as if in these couple minutes, as I was just walking, and I was walking towards the sunset, and I was observing all these colors, it was almost as if all of these worries that I had, all these stresses, whether it was about work, whether it was about my friends, whether it was about my relationships, whatever it was that I was thinking about and I was worried about, it was almost as if for just 2 minutes, as I was observing the sunset, all of it just went away. And it was in these 2 minutes that the thought occurred to me, you know what? I would have never seen this beautiful sunset. I would have never been to this little, kind of like this little happy moment in my life. Have you ever been to a happy place? Wherever it is where you go and you just know there's no stress, you don't have to worry about anything. It's just, you're happy. For some people that may be Disneyland, I don't know. But just think of your happy place. And so I was kind of in this happy place and I was like, you know what? I never would have been in this moment where there were no worries, there were no concerns if I didn't first step outside of my front door. If I didn't leave my house, I would have never seen the beautiful sunset. And I remember earlier that day, I was like, you know what, today seems like a good day to go for a walk, but I'm going to wait till later because it's summer. I'm going to wait till later when the sun has kind of gone down, it's kind of cooled down, and then I'll go for a walk. I'll wait till later. Well, later came, and then I was on my couch and I was like, man, I'm really comfortable right now. I don't want to hit the pause button. I don't want to put my phone down. And so I was just thinking how easy it could have been for me to miss this beautiful, serene blessing if I didn't walk outside, if I didn't make that decision to walk outside my front door. And it was kind of like, I had to stretch a little bit. I had to stretch like, I know it's comfortable to just sit on my couch. I know it's comfortable to just stay in my room. But you know what? I'm going to stretch a little bit. I should go for a walk. You know, it's a good thing, get some fresh air. And there's another instance in the Bible that you kind of find this same kind of stretch out of your little comfort zone. This kind of mental stretch out of your comfort zone. And it's found in the book of Exodus. And in the book of Exodus chapter 14 and verses 15 and 16, it says, "Then the Lord said to Moses, 'Why are you crying to me? Tell the Israelites to move forward. Raise your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea to divide the water so that the Israelites can go through the sea on dry ground.'" Now there's something about this story that challenges me. There's something about this story. And for those of you, some of you guys, a lot of you guys know this story. It's when Moses raises his staff, he raises his hand over the Red Sea, and God is able to part the Red Sea for him. Some of you guys may know the story, and if you know it, great, this is a good refresher. But if you don't know it, here's a quick summary. God's people were in Egypt, right? God's people were in Egypt, and they were enslaved for years and years and years. They were in bondage under the Egyptians. And somehow, God through Moses, they were able to negotiate with Pharaoh, the leader of Egypt, to say, all right, you know what, come on, let my people go. Let the people out of Egypt. And so Pharaoh's like, all right, you can take the people, just leave. And so here we are in the story. Moses is leading God's people out of Egypt. They're on their way. They've already left. They've departed. And in the meantime, Pharaoh, he's approached by some of his leaders, and he's like, yo, why did we do that? Like, who's going to serve us? Who's going to pick up after us? Who's going to, bring us our food? Who's going to fetch us water? Who's going to fan us? And Pharaoh's like, you know what? You're right. That was a dumb move. Let's go get them. Let's go get them back. And so Pharaoh's like, he gets all of his armed forces. He gets all of his army. He gets all of his military. He gets all of his tanks. And, okay, they're not tanks. But they get all their chariots, and they start chasing after them. It's like, let's go get them back. And so as Moses and his people, as Moses and God's people are walking, they can kind of see the chariots, they can kind of see the dust that's kicking up, and he hears them chase them. And so the people, they start crying like, Moses, yo, they're starting to chase us. They're right after us. They're going to catch up to us. Hey, God, how did we get in this spot? At least back in Egypt, we had to serve them, but we had at least a home. We weren't sweating in this heat. How did we get in this situation? And I'm trying to put myself into Moses' shoes. If you think about just putting yourself into Moses' shoes, and I'm trying to think, if I were Moses, I'm like, okay, God, let me get this right. You're telling me to get down between these two mountains, metaphorically. You're telling me to get down between these two giants, metaphorically. So you have Pharaoh and his entire armed forces behind us. They're chasing us. And then in front of us, you have this entire huge body of water. And you're telling us to move forward? And God's like, listen, I don't want to hear you complaining. I don't want to hear you whining. How do you guys like to complain? Let's be honest. You guys like to complain. It's not, I know. He's like, let me get this right. You want me to go down and just go? You just want us to go? And then get this. God tells Moses to move forward before he even tells him to stretch out his hand to part the waters. And so, I'm trying to think, you want me to do what? And God's like, I don't want to hear you complaining. I don't want to hear the whining. I know how, you don't think I know how crazy this is? Just go, Moses, stop complaining. And it just got me because it's almost as if God is saying, you know what, sometimes I need you to move your minds before I can move you, in fact. Here are God's people, their faith has been so weakened after years and years and years of serving other people, of slavery, that, God has to recondition and strengthen their faith so much to move at the sound of his voice and not what they see around him. Does that sound familiar to today's world? There's some craziness going on in our world today. God's saying, it's not always when you're stressed out that I'm going to do something amazing. I need you to stretch a little bit before I can do something amazing. A few years ago, I'm not a pastor, but I was pastoring a group of teens your age, and we were in the country of Nicaragua. And we were down there on a mission trip. And as we were on this mission trip, our goal was to build this church. And, we're talking like we're actually getting cement blocks and we're building like a physical structure. And so, we're going to be doing some physical labor, we're going to be out, working with the people. It's hot, it's humid in this part of the world, in this country. And so, you know what? We told everyone, don't worry about bringing church clothes because we're going to be sweating a lot. We're going to be, we're just going to be dirty with all the mud, all the cement just all over. Don't worry about bringing your nice dresses. Don't worry about bringing your nice church clothes. We're just going to do our own church service with our own little group. Don't worry about it. Well, midway through the first week there, I got approached. We were in this city called Matagalpa in Nicaragua. And when we were there and we were serving, the pastor of the Central Church, which is like the biggest church in this city, he approached me and he said, "Hey, Brother Aaron, can you come and preach at our church?" And I was like, I was humble and I said, "Hey, Pastor, I really appreciate, this invitation, but I don't think I'm suited, literally, to preach in your church. Sometimes when you go to these countries, there's a very conservative culture. Some churches, maybe some of your churches here, you can kind of wear whatever you want. But sometimes when we go in these countries, they're just more conservative. They have different aspects about their culture where you really should wear a long flowing dress if you're a lady. And if you're a guy, that was very typical. Everybody wore suits, even though it was like 90 plus, 100 plus degrees outside and humid. It was just a culture. And if you didn't come to church dressed up, it was almost like, dude, you're disrespecting God. And so when the pastor asked, "Brother Aaron, can you preach at our church?" I said, I appreciate the offer, but I don't, to be honest with you, I don't have clothes. All I have are these dirty jeans that have gotten muddied up. I have a shirt that just says Ultimate Workout. It has like all this cement all over. I'm sweaty. I didn't have the option to do laundry even, so I couldn't even wash my jeans. And so I said, Pastor, I really appreciate it, but I don't think I'm well dressed enough to preach in your church. And so the pastor, he's kind of standing there. He's like, "I understand that, and I appreciate the respect you have." But he said, "Don't worry about it. Just plan on preaching anyways. I'll talk to the elders. I'll talk to some of the church members. Don't worry about it. It'll be worked out. Just plan on preaching anyways." I said, anyways. So that day later, this was on a Tuesday. Thursday came, and I saw the pastor again. I said, "Pastor, I think you should find another person to preach on Sabbath. I don't think you understand. I don't have clothes. I'm going to come up with shorts, maybe basketball shorts. That's the cleanest thing I have. Maybe a t-shirt, maybe a guy's tank. I don't have clothes to wear to church." He said, "Don't worry about it. I don't need you." Saturday morning, I get a little knock on my tent. And I was early in the morning. I kid you not, I opened up my tent window, I just kind of wake up. And at my tent's door was the pastor. And in his hands, he was holding a suit. Now, I'm not talking like some old hand-me-down, and there's nothing wrong with hand-me-downs. But I'm not talking, you know what I mean? I'm not talking about an old hand-me-down that didn't really fit me. I'm not talking about something that they just picked up from the Goodwill. There's nothing wrong with the Goodwill. But you know what I mean? It's not like something you just picked up from the Goodwill that was like 4 sizes too big for me. This suit was a nice suit. This suit was brand new. It was slim fit. There was even a nice shirt. It was freshly pressed, ironed, and a tie. I don't even know how they do my size, but it was a full suit setup. And the pastor said to me, "Brother Aaron, God has provided." And so here I was stressing out, maybe it wasn't even that big of a deal. I was stressing out, I was worried so much about disrespecting God in a different culture that I'm not, part of. They know I'm American. And so, here I am, I don't want to disrespect. And so I'm so worried. And it was almost as if, again, God was saying, "See, it's not in your stress that I'm always going to do something amazing. It's in your stretch." And there's another instance where someone is stressed out in the Bible. And in the book of Psalm, chapter 61, Psalm chapter 61 and verse 1 to 2, David is talking here. And he says, "Hear my cry, O God. Listen to my prayer. From the ends of the earth I call you. I call as my heart grows faint. Lead me to the rock that is high." David, we don't know what trouble David is in, but David is in some trouble. We don't know quite what, but he's stressed out about something. He's like, God, hear my prayer. I'm in a bind here. And he doesn't just pray, like, hear my prayer. He says, like, I don't just want you to hear my words. I want you to, you see my situation. Do something about my situation. And, sometimes, you see throughout the Bible where Jesus just does a miracle. He just does it out of thin air. And then there are some other instances where he kind of challenges people. He's like, you know what? I need you to meet me halfway. He's like, I need you to stretch a little bit in order for me to do something amazing. You see, my life, there have been some stresses and some stretches in my life. You see, some of you maybe have been born into an Adventist family. Some of you guys grew up in the Adventist church as, to this day. And some of you guys maybe are brand new. I fall into the category where I was not born. I was not born into the Adventist church. I was actually born into a Catholic family. And it wasn't until I got to first grade that, we became Adventists. And I remember, that's actually where all of the troubles and all of the stresses began when we became Adventists. Because my parents got into a nasty divorce. And you might think, like, what divorce isn't nasty? But this was a nasty divorce. You see, my father, he had this anger problem. He was a very verbally abusive man. And he didn't always used to be like this, but at a certain point, something snapped, and he became a very angry man. He was so angry. I remember there were some nights where, our family, we were an ice hockey fan, and he'd be watching the Chicago Blackhawks and the LA Kings. And I remember when he was sitting on the couch, and he'd be watching the game, and little baby Aaron, I just remember if I were to cross between him and the TV, I just cross, I don't know what I'm doing. He's like, what the H are you doing? Get out of my way. And he was a very angry man. And it got to a point where, my mom couldn't take it anymore. And so my mom picked me up and we left, and I kind of knew in that moment that, I probably would never see my father ever again. But the worst part was, long story short, he took all of our money. And so my mom and I really had nowhere to go. And so we ended up pretty much homeless on the streets of LA. And I'm not talking about, Beverly Hills, Hollywood. I'm not talking about, some fancy, ritzy, place. I'm talking about the ghetto streets. I'm talking about, you go to sleep at night, you hear gunshots. I'm talking about, you hear loud mariachi music, late nights and stuff. This is not one of those neighborhoods where you call the cops and say, hey, it's kind of past 10 p.m., my neighbor's blasting music. Like, you hear gunshots. And I just remember going to sleep each and every night, and I just remember, maybe this is my life. Maybe there's nothing better than this. And I remember just sleeping, on the street there, and I just remember, maybe there's nothing better. And I just remember every day I would go to sleep crying. Some days, I didn't even know what we were going to eat that night. But there was one thing that my mom always made sure that was secure. And that was that, she put me into a good Christian school, and we had uniforms, and she always made sure that I had a uniform every morning and that it was cleanly pressed, and I looked good. And so if you were one of my classmates and you looked at me every day at school, you would have never known that I was living on the streets. And so here's the thing, back then, I was kind of part of the cool kids, and so there was this one family at our school. And there was this one family, and you could really tell that they were poor. This family, maybe they were even homeless too. But I just remember they would wear their uniforms, but it looked like their uniforms hadn't been washed, not in days, maybe in weeks. And they would come and they kind of smell dirty, they kind of smell, and you'd see like stains all over their shirts. They kind of looked like they just like rolled over in the dirt a few times. It was bad. And I just remember, my group of friends and I, we'd make fun of them, like, you're homeless, you poor kid, and we'd tease them. But deep down inside, I was like, man, that's me. Like, that's me. remember I was in this low part of my life, and not knowing if we were going to be able to eat that night. And I remember, we lived an hour away from this school, and so I remember getting invited to all my friends' birthday parties. They would have these hangouts at their parties. They had these bouncing houses. Some of them had pools. A lot of them had the latest and greatest toys, and the latest and greatest cell phone, whatever it was. And I would see all of this, and I knew that we couldn't afford that. And so, we walk into Kmart. You don't have Kmart here, but we walk into Target, and I remember asking my mom, I was like, Mom, the little kid's 9 years old, me, 9-year-old Aaron, 10 years old Aaron. I remember walking in, and I was like, Mama, can I get a toy? And she would tell me, if you could find a toy that's $1 or less, you can get it. And that's how poor we were. Kids are having parties, they're having all the latest and greatest toys, and here I was just barely able to buy a Hot Wheels car. And so I remember, I got a little older into my preteen years. I got to 13 years old, and I said, God, I'm going to be real. I don't know. And 13-year-old me, I'm not kidding, 13-year-old me, I said, I don't know that I can take an entire life like this. And so I said, God, if you are real, you're going to fix my life. That was really bold. That's how bold I was to stand up to God. I said, God, if you are real, you're going to fix my life. You're going to fix my family situation. I'm not going to be homeless. And some stories don't end happy. Some stories, God could have easily zapped me right there and then. But believe it or not, life got better. And he fixed my family, but he didn't fix my family with my father. My mom got remarried she got married to my stepdad, my parents' stepdad. And he began to show me a fatherly love, a real fatherly love. Because you see, the divorce was so nasty, my father would show up, he wouldn't pay child support, and he would show up at my school. He wouldn't pay child support, but he kind of sneaked a few $100s into my pocket. Now you imagine even now, a few $100, that sounds right about nice, right? You can pretty much buy, at least put it towards something you're saving up towards. But little 9-year-old me is walking around school with $400 cash in my pocket. And so I'm kind of going around hey, look at what I got. And every time he had me money, he would tell me, I love you. And the problem with that is I began to associate love with money. And it kind of twisted, and it really just poisoned the way that I saw love. And so every time I thought of love, I thought, there must be money involved. And so finally, when it got to a point where, my mom found my stepdad, he really showed me a different kind of fatherly love. He showed up to my baseball games, my soccer games. He showed me how to build my first computer. He supported me at school. He brought me to school. He picked me up. He really showed me, and then he showed me a fatherly love. He had Bible studies with me, and even though I sometimes didn't appreciate it, he really sat down and had the patience to explain the Bible with me. And he started to redefine this fatherly love. And then, things got better for my mom too. We were, like I said, we were in a place where we could barely afford the food on the table. We could barely afford, a little toy here, a little toy there. And it got to a point where, we went from homeless in the streets of LA, the ghetto of LA, to living in a house that was valued at $1.4 million. And I don't say that to boast. I don't say that to say, look at me, look at my family. But I say that to say, it doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter what your situation is. It doesn't matter where you came from. It doesn't matter if you were rich, it doesn't matter if you were poor, it doesn't matter what your culture is, it doesn't matter what country you're from. Jesus loves you. And sometimes it takes for him to take us through this stretch, these stresses, so that we can stretch and reach out to God for him to do something amazing in our lives. Sometimes we need to step out of our comfortable territory until we get the opportunity to step into the miracle territory. There's an old book called My Life Today. And it talks about this story about a hawk and a dove. And in this story, this illustration, it talks about this, the only real reason that a hawk has an advantage over a little dove is because it's able to be at an elevated state. It's able to be at a higher place in the sky. And the way it's able to get that dove is that it's able to really build up that speed and come crashing down on this dove. And so it says though, but if this dove continues to climb, if this dove just continues to fly up and up and up, then all of a sudden, this hawk loses its competitive advantage. It begins to lose its tactical advantage. And so, sometimes I wonder in our lives today, what would happen if we were just to stretch a little bit? If we were just to stretch, sometimes we think like, okay, God, I'm going to pray this prayer, I need you to come through really big I need to get an A on this test, or, I'll even settle for a B on this test, knowing very well you didn't study. Who's that sound like in this room today? Or God, I need you to come in really big right now. I need you to come through really big. I know I haven't been the best Christian. I know I haven't really reading my Bible, but I really need a miracle right now. I really need that person not to find the secret. Or God, I know I haven't been the best Christian. I haven't missed church the last few weeks. Or I know I was maybe listening, I was talking some gossip, I was saying some words I probably shouldn't have said. But God, if you can really just come through and just if you would notice me. Or I wonder I wonder if there's some sign that you can give me that she's the one. How many guys have said that before? And sometimes, we want God to come through really big. And we're like, I'm going to pray and rest. And God's like, no, I need you to pray and press. It's like, you can't just say that, okay, God, I'm ready to press forward to that end finish line, but I'm not willing to do anything. It doesn't work that way. And so God is saying, I don't need you to pray and rest. I need you to pray and press forward. Just because you pray doesn't mean you give up. Just because you pray doesn't mean okay, well, I did everything else. I guess I'm just going to leave it in God's hand. Sure, that's great to say, but no. God's like, I need you to pray and press forward. So God's saying, I know maybe you're worried about your future. Maybe you're worried about, I don't know what college I'm going to go to after high school. Maybe, maybe your family's having issues. Maybe you're having some financial difficulties yourself. I don't know what it is. Maybe you're having some relationship issues. Maybe you find yourself always finding the wrong girlfriend. Or maybe you find yourself having the wrong boyfriend. And you're like, you wonder why. And maybe you're having all these difficulties and you're wondering what's the deal here? I want you guys to think when the last time was that you were just really stressed out. When was the last time and if you have a situation where there was a situation where you were really in a bind and you were I don't know how I'm going to get out of this. Maybe it's something like, you got a bad grade and your mom or dad's going to see that grade. She's going to hand it to you. She sees that bad grade, and you're wait. Maybe you were in a life or death situation, and you just didn't know what was going to happen. You're like, oh man, I don't know what I'm going to do. Or maybe you did something, or you said something that you just knew was going to destroy your friendship with somebody. Or you knew it was going to destroy your relationship between two other people. And you're just I shouldn't have done that. When's the last time you were stressed out? And I want you to think now, when's the last time you were in a happy place? When's the last time you were not stressed out? When's the last time you felt like you didn't have a care in the world for anything because everything was going so well, everything was happy, You were in this place where you were just so happy and you felt like you didn't have to worry about anything. And chances are, it took for you to get out of your comfort zone to get to this happy place. Right? You know, like maybe it's a vacation. Maybe you think of a vacation, you're like, oh, I remember that one family trip, or I remember that one school, that field trip, or I remember that one, class trip, and it was so fun. But you had to decide to go. You had to maybe pay the money. There was maybe a fee involved. Maybe you had to lose your bag, maybe you had to lose your luggage, you had to get on the plane, and maybe you hate plane rides. But it was enjoyable. And so sometimes we go through these experiences, and sometimes it's like, God, come through. And sometimes you're like, God, just do everything for me. And God's like, no, I need you to stretch a little bit. And so sometimes, when we see everything going on in our world today, sometimes when we see all this madness, we see all this war, we see all this disagreements, we see all this hatred just going around, it's easy for our faith to become so weakened. It's easy for our faith to become so diminished because of all the just wickedness and evil that we see. And God says, I need you to think about something a little different. I need you to think a little different. I need you to change your mind to move at the sound of my voice, not at what you see. Because what you're seeing in this world right now is not great. There's some highlights. There's ice cream, there's Disneyland, and there's some things that are cool in this world. But, when you take a look at everything going on in this world, it's like, you're not going to be happy, you're not going to be very encouraged by what you see. And so tonight's message is this. It's not in your stress that God is always going to do something amazing. It's in your stretch. God is calling us today to change how we see how God is going to work in our lives. He's saying, I know there's a lot of crazy things going on, but I need you to move at the sound of my voice. You know what? I'm going to say something really real right now. Maybe you guys can't even hear Jesus' voice in your lives right now. Because you're so, we're going back to last night or the night before's message, we're so consumed by what we're looking at on our phones. We're so consumed about what makes us happy in that moment. We're so consumed by looking at that screen, looking at that video that we should not be looking at. We're so consumed by these things that we don't even hear, we don't even know. Maybe some of us in here don't even know what Jesus' voice sounds like. Somebody say mercy. When was the last time you heard Jesus' voice? I'm going to tell you right now, I didn't want to speak here this week. I'm not perfect either. And I didn't want to speak this week. And so when the pastor asked me, he said, hey, can you come and speak at U10? I was like, no. That's a hard no. And I prayed overnight. I might have dozed off here and there, but I prayed overnight. I prayed an entire night. I said, Jesus, I am not the right person to speak. I have my flaws. I still make mistakes. I said, I am not speaking at the youth tent. And so the next morning I went to work and I had every intention of texting the pastor back to say, you know what, thank you for the invitation, but I don't think I'm the right person to speak. And it was then, it was almost as if I heard a whisper that says, Aaron, you're right. You're not perfect. In fact, you're far from perfect. You are so flawed, Aaron. But you know what? That makes you just as good as anyone to preach. And so friends, it doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter what your background is. It doesn't matter if you've never heard Jesus' voice ever. It doesn't matter if you've heard it plenty of times. Jesus can use you. And so when we're talking about this thing, when we're talking about being relevant in our faith today, we're like, how is being a Christian today relevant? And Jesus said, right now is the time when it's most relevant. And right now is when I need you to listen to my voice. And so tonight, Think about where you need to stretch a little bit in your life to hear Jesus is calling for your life. Maybe he's calling you to be baptized later this week. Maybe you've already been baptized and he's calling you, like, you know what, like, there's some areas in my life where I know I've fallen short. I've allowed myself to be so consumed by everything but Jesus' voice. And so maybe Jesus is calling you to recommit your life to him later this week. But tonight, I really want you to think about when the last time was when you heard Jesus' voice in your life. Maybe you've never really heard his voice. And if that's the case, maybe tonight you need to spend some time in prayer. You don't necessarily need to be on your physical knees, but maybe you need to lift up a prayer to God and say, you know what? I don't even know what to pray. But you know what? Sometimes the best prayers happen when you don't even know what to say at all. And so maybe there's someone in here tonight that just needs to spend some time in prayer. You know, Jesus, I've never heard your voice in my life. I've never heard your calling in my life. What does that look like? Help me to see that. Because I guarantee you, he's knocking. He's knocking at your heart's door. And he's saying, now more than ever, I need you. I need you to work in this world. I need you to press a little harder than you know that you are right now. So I'm going to ask you guys to stand with me. And we're going to just pray. Let's pray. Jesus, some of us, including myself, have allowed ourselves to slip so far from you. Some of us have allowed our faith in you to become so diminished that we have been living our lives based on what we see in front of us, what we see around us. Jesus, please help us to recondition. Please help us to recondition our faith in you so that we can search for your voice and that we can move in faith to what we hear from you and not what we see. We thank you for our stories, from where we come. It makes us who we are. It's important. It contributes to who we are today. But help us to understand that no matter where we come from, no matter what our background is, you can use us and you are calling us. We thank you for loving us, even sometimes